Hi, are you wondering how much tax you actually pay for living in the UK? Or have you ever considered what is the total amount of tax you pay for living in the UK? Then you need to watch this video. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down the different types of taxes that people pay for living in the UK. And I'll also be sharing some tips on how you can avoid paying some of those expensive taxes while living in the UK.
Get strong.
Hello and welcome to The Nimble Nomad. My name is Arjun, and on this channel we talk about the tips, tricks and hacks to survive and thrive in the UK. On this channel I share my experience of living life in the UK as a first generation immigrant. In 2020, the UK government has had to borrow a whole bunch of money in order to pay for the after effects of the pandemic and support and prop up the economy for the UK. Now, as an aftermath of all this government borrowing and the debt that's been accrued, the UK government is going to have to pay back this debt. And there's been a lot of discussions and news articles and published papers about how potentially the government can pay back the debt that they've accrued. And one of the suggestions actually is an increase in the income tax that people are paying at the moment in the UK. Now, I've lived in the UK for a very long time, and I know that the income tax and generally taxes in the UK are very high. So I thought about it a little bit. I was like, okay, income tax is just one of the taxes that I actually pay, but there are other taxes that I pay for as well. And I decided to do some research because I was having this conversation with a friend of mine. So on the basis of my research, I found out that the UK tax to GDP ratio, basically how much tax pays for the economy or is relative to the economy in the UK is about 33.5%. And this, as per the OECD country ranking, the UK ranks 23rd in comparison to all of the other OECD countries. So in comparison to countries like the US and Japan, the UK is actually relatively high. So the US was in the mid to low 20s, so about 24% of tax to GDP. And Japan was about 31%. So, which is quite surprising when you think about the size of our economy in the UK. So with this in mind, in this video, I'm actually going to be breaking down the different types of taxes. So there are 7 that I can think of, and I'll try and be as quick as possible and run through those. And then at the end of this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some tips on how you can reduce your tax bill for some of these taxes that you have to pay in the UK. So this is all based on my personal experience. So in case you're interested in just jumping to that, I've added chapter links in the description below. So feel free to go and click that if you want to. But I do recommend you watch the entire video if you can, because you'll understand the different types of taxes that you are paying without even realizing it. Okay, so the first tax that I want to talk about is the most obvious and relevant one, which everybody cares about, is the income tax. So the UK has a progressive taxation system, which basically means that the more money you make, the more tax you pay. And I'll bring up the tax slabs and tax brackets up on screen. But basically there are 4 slabs, and the first slab basically says that you have a tax personal allowance, which is you don't actually pay any tax for money earned up to £12,500 a year if you're in the tax year 2020-2021. Obviously these change year on year. But as you go up, so as you start making more money, you start paying more tax on the difference between the different slabs. So this goes up all the way up to 45%. So if you're making anything over £150,000, then you're basically paying a 45% tax on it. Now keep in mind that this is the taxation system for England. So it's England and Wales, so it's ex Scotland. So Scotland has a different taxation system. I'll add a link in the description below where you can find some of these details as well. So the second tax that you actually pay in addition to your income tax, and this comes out from your salary directly, is the national insurance contribution. So this is sort of a bolt-on tax that you pay. And again, this is also progressive depending on how much money you earn. But basically, the national insurance contribution is a sort of a tax that the government takes from individuals in order to provide benefits such as child benefits, maternity benefits, bereavement support benefit, and even the pension to a certain degree is supported by this national contribution. So as long as you're making this national insurance contribution, in the future you would be available to access the state pension when you retire. Now, the amount of national insurance that you pay depends on the amount you earn, and also can be modified, and I'll talk about this in the tips as I get through this later in the video. Okay, so the third tax that you want to pay, or you end up paying when you're living in the UK, most definitely is the council tax. And this is irrelevant of whether you're working or not working, you have to pay it. And basically this is a sort of a state tax that you pay to the local council where you live in the UK. Now, the three things that decide or make a difference on how you end up paying your council tax is, number one, whether you're living alone or with a family or with another individual in an apartment or a house. The second thing is which council you're actually living in. So the tax actually increases or decreases depending on the tax slabs for a particular council. And then the third thing is the size and exact location of your property. So the property that you're living in will be classed under different bands. They usually have an alphabet associated with it, so A to E, and this decides the amount of tax that you'll pay within a council. So again, within a council there are different tax slabs that apply for the type of property that you're living in. Basically, the council tax is actually used for simple services like keeping the roads clean, making sure the roads are paved and the footpaths are available, taking away garbage. So those are the sort of things that you're paying for with your council. Again, this is a tax that I'm going to talk about later in this video, which is something that you have some flexibility on and ways in which you can reduce this tax bill. Okay, so the fourth one is VAT, or value added tax. So this is the most common type of tax that almost every single person living in the UK pays for without knowing about it. So basically this is a tax that is bolted on to commonly used or purchased goods and services within the country, and this was raised from 17.5% in 2011 to 20% in 2011. So basically there's a 20% tax or VAT that you pay on almost every good and service that you purchase. Now, there is obviously an exception to certain things, but basically this applies to everything, and unfortunately it's one that you can't get away from. Of course, the government has reduced this VAT for certain businesses during the pandemic, but it's one that you can't actually get away from. Okay, so number 5, this is a special tax for immigrants, and basically it's not really a tax as much as it's branded as a fees, but it's the immigration health surcharge. So if you're a first generation immigrant, or if you moved to the UK and you needed a visa to live in the UK for more than 6 months, then you most definitely have paid this fees as part of your visa application. So this is the most annoying and my least favorite one, because basically what this is a fees that the tax that the government takes from immigrants in order for them to access and use the NHS, or the National Health Service, that is provided to everybody living in the UK. So what you can do with by paying this is you can access the National Health Service for free. Unfortunately, if you're an immigrant and you want to live in the UK, there's no way of getting around it, and you must pay this. So in 2020, this fees actually went up from £400 a year to £624 per year that you had to pay. So if you had a 3-year visa, then you have to multiply that amount into 3. So you would have had to pay this upfront as part of your application fees. Unfortunately, this fees is not going to go away anytime soon, and there's no way of getting around it. The bit that I don't like about it is the fact that if you're working in the UK, you're technically paying for the NHS through the income tax and the national insurance contributions that you already pay for as part of the deductibles from your annual salary. Okay, the sixth one is stamp duty land tax. So in case you're looking to buy a property in the UK, then basically you're going to be hit with this stamp duty land tax. Now basically this is the same thing as paying annual property tax, except in the UK there's this massive one-time tax that you need to pay when you want to buy or purchase a property to live in the UK. So this again is progressive, and it depends on the value of the property that you're purchasing in order to live in. Now there is an exception in that in 2020 the UK government announced a stamp duty exemption or holiday until the 31st of March 2021 because of the pandemic situation. So basically what they did was they reduced or removed all SDLT tax for all properties under £500,000, and anything over that the prices of the tax were reduced as well. I'll bring up on screen what the current SDLT tax slabs are and what they will be from the 1st of April 2021. Of course, this has had a counter effect in that the price of property has skyrocketed, and therefore it's sort of like a balancing act that you need to play with if you want to, whether you want to buy or whether you want to wait to purchase your property after the holiday exemption ends. I've done a separate video in a lot of detail, and I'll add a link of that there in case you're interested in going ahead and watching that. The absolute final one that I want to talk about is stamp duty reserve tax. So this is a tax that you need to pay each time you want to purchase or sell any UK security. So this is a tax on investments, and basically it's 0.5% of the transaction that you're going to make. So let's say, for the sake of argument, that you wanted to buy some shares of Shell which are listed on the London Stock Exchange, and let's say you wanted to buy it for, I don't know, £10, and any transaction that you make, you have to pay a 0.5% fees on top of that. So this is again another tax that you can't get away with, and it seems small on the face of it, but if you think about the investment over your lifetime in the UK, and especially if you're investing in UK equities, this can certainly add up. All right, let's get into the 3 ways in which you can cut and reduce your tax bill legally. So the first one is basically your income and national insurance contribution. Now the easiest way to reduce your tax bill on your income tax as well as your national insurance contribution is by increasing your contributions towards your employer pension pot. So in the UK, most or every employer is legally required to offer every employee a employment pension pot, and some employers actually contribute into the employment pension pot in addition to what an employee is willing to do so. Now the primary driver for this is the government basically wants retirees to be well off, because well-off retirees need less support essentially. So if, for example, let's say hypothetically you're earning £50,000. Now, if you decided to, and this is your salary before taxes. So if you decided to contribute £20,000 each year into your pension pot, that £20,000 would actually become tax-free. So it would go straight 20,000 before your tax deductible bill would come through into that pension pot. So you're automatically preventing or well, technically not paying tax on that £20,000. Now the other flip side to this is if you get annual bonuses, and some companies offer this, you might want to consider instead of taking that bonus as cash, transferring it into your pension pot, because you'll save on the tax bill that you probably have to pay on that bonus as well. Okay, the second one, as I talked about, was council tax. Now, as I said before, council tax is a tax that you should not underestimate in your annual or monthly budget, because for some people, and specifically in my case, for example, the council tax bill can be as high as 15% of your monthly rent, which is really high if you consider how much you're paying for your rent. So there are two ways of actually reducing your council tax. One is if you're a single person or if you're living alone in a property, then you can automatically apply for a reduced council tax. And by doing that, your council tax bill reduces by 25% automatically. Now, if, for example, you are not living alone and you live with a family, the other thing you might want to consider is doing some research on the different councils as to which councils are cheaper than the others, and also looking at where the tax band for the different types of properties are within a council. So I'll give you the example where I was living in London, inside central London, in zone 2. I was paying £60 a month on my council tax. And this is much lower comparison to where I'm living now, which is still in London, but it's on the outer edges of London essentially. So there's massive disparities, and basically not all councils are equal. So this is another way that you can effectively manage your council tax bill and how much you pay each month. Okay, the third one is basically the stamp duty land tax. Now, obviously, this is one that you have to pay, and it depends on the property that you must pay. And it's not so much so as avoiding it, but just managing that tax a bit more effectively. Now, as I said earlier, so the stamp duty land tax is a progressive tax and it depends on the property that you're buying. But there are two ways in which you can reduce this tax bill. Number one is if you're a first-time buyer. So if you're a first-time buyer and you've never owned a property anywhere else, automatically the allowance that you get goes up. So on the first £300,000 of any property value that you're buying, you actually don't have to pay any tax on it. It's only after that that you have to pay the balance percentage on the remainder of that tax. So one way to do it is to only buy a property when you're absolutely sure that this is the property that you're going to live for a really long time, and maybe not like constantly jumping properties and staircasing. Some people do that. And then the other aspect that you could consider is you might want to consider buying now before the stamp duty holiday actually ends. Now, this is a bit basic, I know, but then you might want to consider what is the pros and cons of buying now versus not, because ultimately, is there basically a property which you like, which is probably cheaper because you're not paying that stamp duty tax, because this is money that you're retaining and you're not paying to the government. I do, in all honesty, think that the stamp duty holiday will be extended, but it's another way to probably balance this cost as well. Okay, so that's it guys for this video. I'd love to hear whether you think there are any taxes that I've missed that people pay in the UK. And if you do have any thoughts on or comments on the stuff that I've run through in this video, I'd love to hear your views. If there are views that where I've missed maybe ways in which you can be more efficient with your tax, or if you think otherwise from what I've suggested, I'd love to hear in the comments section below. And if you like this video, please smash that like button and don't forget to subscribe. It really helps out the channel on the YouTube algorithm, and it helps this video reach more people. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.